OLAD Ben Slogan here, and welcome to the One Last Adventure Devlog Part 2. In this part, we're going to cover everything in the broadest strokes possible, everything that I did in the first year of development of working on this game. Side note, if you want to see the videos that this video is based off of, it is in the description below. They're unlisted, but they're there if you want to see them. Also, once again, this is scripted, so if I'm looking over here, it is because that is where the script is. So like I said in part 1, I kicked off this journey by doing some studying and trying to figure out what I needed to do and some of the things I needed to avoid in order to make the best game that I was capable of with absolutely no experience. Side note, if you want to see those kind of videos, like the videos that I saw to prepare myself, I actually have a link to that in the description as well. I decided to sort of compile a list of the videos that I like to watch to kind of get me in the mindset. It's also full of a lot of good tips, both if you're doing RPG Maker or if you're just in game development in general. I mean, both work. But if you want to give that a look over, I have that list in the playlist. I have that playlist in the link in the description as well. Now it's worth mentioning that I chose to stay pretty close to the RTP because this game is on a shoestring budget at the moment. And me having no artistic ability of note, that kind of confines me to not being able to do a whole bunch of stuff, or at least make a whole bunch of graphical assets on my own. That being said, I still do need some graphical assets, so I set about to finding someone who could help. And this is how I met Sand, who is my head pixel artist. Seriously, shout out to Sand. He's super fast, super affordable. If you're working on an RPG Maker game, head over to the RPG Maker Discord if you need help with pixel art. Look this guy up, he is phenomenal. I cannot recommend him enough. First thing I needed was cars. I found a model that I really liked by Dutch Mountain on the RPG Maker forums, but I needed it in a sprite format. Took some trial and error to make the traffic. If you see here, I tried making 2 events with the car split in half. That didn't quite work. Took a bit before I realized you could just make an oversized sprite map and then just use to make everything work. I also learned how to put a sepia tint in my game, and I don't think I will keep that part. But after that, I asked my aunt to draft up some character concept art for the main characters of the game. Now, for context, my aunt used to draw a lot, but she hasn't really done much drawing lately, and at this point, she didn't really care to. So she made a few concepts in this sort of gacha doll maker app she has. It's kind of like what I use with Gacha Life, but it's different. I don't know, regardless, she used that app to make some character designs. I thought they slapped. Next, I started working on some of the systems I needed to put in place. One of the things I really wanted to try and crack the code on was HP and MP. Particularly, a lot of games, in my opinion, just have way too much HP and MP. Like, for instance, a level 100 mage in Final Fantasy XIV shows 10,000 MP in the mana bar. And like, I get that sort of after how many years and patches, but still, why 10,000? By contrast, in Kingdom Hearts 1, you have a maximum at max level of 19 HP. That's completely manageable. I sort of have the same philosophy when it comes to HP. My D&D analogy from part 1, unless you're a barbarian, it's rare that you're going into the triple digits when it comes to HP. So bearing this in mind, I also look into different abilities and weapons in the game that have been pre-programmed, and just delete a whole bunch of them, because this is a 30s fantasy. Swords are out, guns are in. Well, sort of. My aunt says that there should be some sort of melee option, so I did add the ability to use the butt of a rifle or use the revolver as a club. Now, one thing I'm not really wanting to deal with is equipment. That's a complication added that I don't need to be dealing with. And it's just a feature that I don't feel like needs to be in this game particularly. It adds a whole lot of complicated math that I'm not ready to tackle. That is to say, I would rather just have set values onto how much something does damage for, and having equipment that you can change out complicates that. Now that's all well and good, but I'm still bad with formulas, so I took my issue to a buddy of mine, Fluxdog, He gave me some advice, and I took that advice and plugged it into ChatGPT. By the way, yes, I am using ChatGPT. That is the only form of AI that I will be using and have used for this game. I believe AI is a valuable tool for artists that need a hand, but I also believe that there is a responsible way to use it. As I go through, I'll disclose in what ways I use ChatGPT. If that's an automatic no-go for you, I get it. However, if you're like me and you think it can be of some good, or at the very least are open to being challenged to see if you agree with my use of AI, please stick around. Hopefully we can agree on a few things. Where was I? Right, ChatGPT's formula. So, keeping this dirt simple, I decided to go with a pretty straightforward formula of attack minus defense equals damage. ChatGPT suggested that for level 1, I could start out with a simple 10 to my player's attack value, to an enemy's 5 at the defense value, and then for every level, the player could get 5 added to their attack value. And I can adjust the defense value per level, kind of in the area that they're at, by 3. ChatGPT deems this a good starting place, and to just adjust the defense values as needed given the balance that the fight's supposed to be at. It also gave the same 3 per level advice in respect to the player's defense value. I asked what the starting hit points and following progression should be, and it suggested starting the HP being twice their attack value. When I asked how it would adjust the enemy's defense for difficulty, it suggested I do a few levels above the player's defense for easier fights, and then for harder fights just have the attack around double what the player's defense is. Ultimately, I think this is a good approach. It keeps things simple and streamlined, but playtesting will tell. During this time, I was also trying to figure out proximity sound for the traffic of the cars passing by, and frankly, to my knowledge, I believe I still have all the tools to fix this issue, but last I checked, I think I'm still stuck on this. Since we're on the topic of cars, while the sound was an issue, another issue I found was there was just a bit of an overlap when the player stood in front of a car before it came to a stop, but pretty simple fix. Remember before when I said I had the image of the car split in two? I just had the front event just empty, and then the rear event being the car, so that way the front kind of acts as like a little seeker sort of thing. This also kind of simulates, a nice safe stopping distance with cars, so win-win. Continuing on, seeing that firearms are a part of this game, I thought it prudent to include reloading as part of the strategy element to the game. Note that I said reloading, not ammo. If I have the player worried about running out of ammo completely, we lose some of that beloved simplicity I'm alluding to. Anyway, I started looking into how I can implement this, and ultimately I settled on just using the TP meter as a sort of ammo gauge. And those of you looking to me as an example as how to make an RPG Maker game, 1, don't. But 2, do not take what I just said to mean I don't know how to program out TP, so I just repurposed it. I mean, you shouldn't take that as that anyway, because TP is super easy to program out. There's a checkbox for it and everything. I brought this up because MP, completely different story. It's not easily disabled without a plugin, and there's a lot of people that are inclined to shoehorn magic into their games to make up for this. Please, if magic does not belong in your games, do not take the shoehorn solution. People are going to notice that you just don't know how to program out MP. Which, by the way, I have no idea how to program out MP either, and I kind of need to because in this world setting, not a lot of people know how to use magic. So a little simple plugin that just disables the MP bar altogether wouldn't cut it for me. I needed some sort of plugin that disabled some players' MP bars, but not others. I now have a plugin for that, props to George from DungeonForge.net. Circling back to the weapons, basically each character has a different amount of TP, which I was able to change the max amount thanks to one of Yanfly's plugins. And when firing, the TP depletes at different rates depending on how many bullets that weapon is supposed to discharge in a round. To wit, a revolver has 6 ammo and depletes 1 at a time, so you have a max TP of 6, and it depletes by 1 every time you fire the gun. By contrast, A double-barrel bolt-action shotgun holds 8 rounds, firing 2 at a time. Yes, those exist. Google it. Anyhow, I start wrestling with the fact that I have the wrong attack options showing up, and it's a whole thing I go a few rounds with before I get it to start working. I don't really remember what specifically was wrong, or how I got it working the way I wanted. I do know that it involved disabling the attack function, which is hard-coded into RPG Maker, so I can't just remove the attack function, and adding my own melee option. Moving on, I set about to making the tutorial, and boy howdy was this an endeavor. I played with a few different tutorial concepts, trying to keep things simple. I tried just making a text blurb. That was obviously poorly received by people who play tested. I thought about doing like a cutscene that showed how the battle system worked, and that could work, but obviously that removes the player from the experience. I thought about trying to somehow do it with just images that popped up, but that didn't seem like it was a really good idea. I thought up basically a few bad tutorials before I just decided that I just had to get good and figure out how to incorporate a tutorial in the battle system that I chose, which, if you recall, isn't part of the RTP. It took some doing. Peeking into Harley Quinn's tech demo, learning how the RTP's battle system is supposed to work, learning how the plugin bridges the gap between those two, and just before long, bada bing, bada boom, I have a tutorial that functions mostly how it should. There was another reason that I wanted to tackle the tutorial, and that was because if I could get the tutorial working how I wanted, that was basically all the groundwork that was needed for every battle that takes place from that point of the game forward. During this process, I learned that the Tactics plugin and the Take Out the Attack function plugin had a conflict. George resolved it. Yay, George. I also asked George if he can make it to where allies can't shoot through each other. That seems like a bit of an oversight to me. Next, I worked on a few of the opening cutscenes and the script. I have a basic overview of what I want the story to be and how I want it to play out, but I haven't sat down and planned out every bit of dialogue. And yes, I do use ChatGPT to help me out in this endeavor. I use ChatGPT to supplement my writing. That is to say, I plug the scenario into ChatGPT, it gives me a few versions of how I want the dialogue to go, and it gives me a good place to start. From there, I step in and give it the human element that is missing, as well as kind of correcting a few of the errors that it gets, because it's not perfect. I want to reiterate and have people take note here. AI is a tool to be used responsibly. I consider myself to be a decent writer, and I use AI to supplement that, not to replace that skill. If I had no confidence in my ability to write, I wouldn't touch ChatGPT. I would just hire a writer. Moving on, I went through a few bug fixes, had one Kahaya Hida, sorry if I butchered that name, fleshed out the character concept for my aunt, took the new character art to sand to make the main characters to put them in the game, and that reveal is coming in the next devlog. I worked a little bit more on the cutscenes, and therein I learned a little bit about how battle animations work within RPG Maker. I put a few other plugins in there, like the Gab window, so that characters can have conversations while they're exploring the map, and that's more or less everything that I can remember that I've seen from the week devlogs. And I think that more or less covers it. A large portion of that first year was just working on the tutorial so that the foundation is in place for the rest of the game. Which means our recap for the first year of this development has reached its conclusion, and in the next video, I can show you what I've been up to since. And I cannot wait to introduce you to the main three. Until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Chillates.